Well, hi, thank you all for coming this morning. Is that screen big enough for y'all? I guess everything's bigger in Texas. I expected to be in one of those small rooms, you know, and I brought seeds to give away, and I wasn't expecting to have such a big group. But anyway, thank you all for coming here. My husband would have been here. He's usually here with me, but he had the opportunity to scratch off something from his bucket list, and he's at the Masters right now. Ooh. He told me to take mental pictures, so I will relay that ooh to him. All right, so we're going to talk about just some unusual vegetables that can be grown in your garden. How many of y'all are vegetable gardeners already? Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to, as we go along, because there are so many of you here, I think you're a good cross-section of master gardeners, so I'm curious as we go along how many of y'all have grown these vegetables that we're going to talk about. So I might ask, you know, every once in a while, raise your hand. So if any of y'all have heard me speak before, you know that I almost always start my slides with this one of George and Mary Stewart. Do we have anybody from Harris County that remembers George and Mary Stewart? So yeah, awesome. They were awesome. And so if it weren't for them, I would not be standing here and doing what I'm doing, because in the 80s, I had a small vegetable plot in our backyard in Houston, and my dad was a gardener in Midland, and I called my dad and said, you know, we've got this little vegetable garden, you know, what's the first thing we should do? And he said, if you want to have a successful vegetable garden in Houston, you need to find yourself an old-timer who has gardened successfully in Houston. In other words, he couldn't give me any advice because Midland and Houston were two different worlds, right? So I went to a vegetable, they called them vegetable school back then in Harris County, put on by Bill Adams and Tom Leroy. How many know them? Yeah. So, and George and Mary happened to be a speaker. I went and talked to them after the class, said, could I go see your garden sometime? And they invited me to their garden. Turned out they lived about 10 minutes away from me. And we just made, you know, regular weekly trips to their home and their garden, and they always gave us vegetables and shared seeds and shared advice and gave my kids Bluebell ice cream in a cone, and it just was a really wonderful memory. And then George passed away when he was 94, Mary when she was 96, and I mean, they were out in the garden. I think they're probably just in their late 70s, maybe 80 in this picture, but you know, bending, lunging, reaching, doing all that stuff, and that's what I want to be doing when I am their age. So they are really my mentors and role model. And when Mary died, her daughter said, Patty, Mother is passing the vegetable baton to you. So I'm taking it and running with it, and that's why I enjoy doing these talks. So there are, before we get into the into my slide of all these different vegetables, I'm not going to talk about tomatoes today. I'm just going to mention these two varieties of tomatoes, because Porter tomato has been around in Texas since the 1940s. It was developed by seedsman V.O. Porter, who owned or founded Porter & Son seed company, and so he developed this Porter tomato that's supposed to take the heat. So anyway, Porter tomato, that is a Texas heirloom tomato because it has been around. The definition of an heirloom generally is that it needs to be you know, in circulation and in being grown for 50 years. And so Porter has been. And then there's another one called JD Special C-Tex Early Black Tomato. Has anybody grown that one? Just a few? One person? Okay, if y'all can find this one, the problem is that you only can, I mean, you can't find seeds for it unless you grow it, but the C-Tex stands for Conroe, Texas, because it was J.D. Brand from Conroe Greenhouses in Conroe. I think they've since moved to Huntsville, but anyway, this was J.D. Brand developed this tomato back in the 80s, and then he just kept saving the seeds, and then they had these greenhouses, and so they would grow their own transplants and sell their transplants. So if you look around, you might be able to find transplants of it. And I hope you can, or if you get, you know, if you can save seed and then share that seed, that would be good. We want to keep these going, you know, so then Once they've been around for 50 years, we can claim them as Texas heirloom. And then Crawford reseeding lettuce, if you're from San Antonio, I'm sure you know about that one. We'll talk about that one later, and we'll also talk about the Stewart Z-Best okra a little bit later.